Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us for the hour is Congressman Mark Pocan, the representative from Wisconsin, representing Wisconsin's 2nd District and the first vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
And I should add, Congressman Pocan will be taking your calls for the hour. Our telephone number is 202-808-9925. You are back in Wisconsin right now. I'm guessing you're doing town halls, unlike many of your Republican colleagues, and nobody is shouting "you lie" at you. How are things going? What are you hearing?
Well, you know, it's been good. We have been getting around. I started the weekend going around the state, actually, to some of the Democratic CD conventions in Republican districts. I wanted, one, people to see a Democrat in those areas where they don't see a Democrat, but two, really have some conversations with them. So I was in Brillion, Wisconsin, and Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and then came back to the College Democratic Convention, and then we've had a town hall in Rock County, which is the county that Paul Ryan and I split. So that was interesting to get, responses from people that, are from the same area that Paul's representing. And then we're doing one on campus this week. So, we're really just doing exactly that, getting around, talking to folks. And, what we're hearing a lot is just concern at the most basic level. What is going on with this administration, concern about their health care and what it would mean to lose the Affordable Care Act, concern about his proposed budget and what it would mean from everything from, research for National Institute of Health and things like Alzheimer's and all sorts of other issues. And then, just wondering, about all the issues I think that we talk about every week that people are just dying to hear more about back home, and yet, interestingly, like you said, not everyone is doing town halls, and I don't think they've seen in Rock County the other member of Congress, Paul Ryan, around too much, and we're trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can to listen to people and try to make sure we're bringing those things back to D.C. when we come.
That's great. That's great. What do you think are the top couple of issues that you're going to be dealing with when Congress returns after the Easter recess?
I think one of the big ones, the date that we have to have something done for the 2017 budget is April 28th, and that coincides with the 100th day of Donald Trump being in office, I've been told. So, you could have a potential shutdown of government, but I don't anticipate that at all. I think that instead we're not going to finish the 17 budget with the normal appropriations process. There's going to be no time to do that, so it'll be likely some sort of continuing resolution, likely through the end of September, and then we really do need to start the 2018 process. So that's one thing that's absolutely on the clock that we have to do. And then I think, everything that's been going on with what happened late last week with the bombing in Syria, and then, from there, concerns that others have. Ted Lieu from California and Justin Amash and Walter Jones and myself did a bipartisan letter on Yemen because we also know that there's been conversations about going into doing things in Yemen, and we want to make sure that Congress is brought back into these into anything that is essentially declaring war or going into another country at this level. And we were concerned that he didn't do that in Syria. We want to make sure he's not doing it in Yemen or anywhere else. But I think that's going to be at the forefront of a lot of our conversations.
Yeah. And finally, before we take calls, just, kind of host's privilege, I guess. I'm curious your thoughts on what's going on with North Korea. This is starting to make me nervous.
Well, and I think everyone right now is in testing mode, right? I mean, Donald Trump a week earlier was saying, let Assad be Assad in Syria, and then next thing you know, he's bombing, and then you've got a country like North Korea trying to also see what they can get away with, I think, and that's what we're watching right now. What I worry is, if this president thinks that, doing a little bombing of $100 million worth of ammunition on a airfield that they're flying out of the next day somehow proved something that he wanted to prove, that he, starts looking at doing this in other areas and responding like that in other areas because his poll numbers have been so dismal. So I just have concern as well that, one, we've got a country that's probably going to try to test what they can get away with a little bit, and two, we've got a president who's trying to test what he needs to do to appear presidential, and he's still on his training wheels.
Yeah, and I think this weekend, I think Saturday or Sunday is the 105th anniversary of the birth of Kim's grandfather, the guy who founded modern day North Korea. And there's a lot of concern that he might try to test a nuke on that day. And there's just it's spooky stuff. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
let's take some phone calls here. If that's all right with you, sir?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Mike in Los Angeles, listening on KPFK. Mike, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, this may be not so much a specific question as just blowing off steam, but the Unfriendly Skies tape from yesterday or day before, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg of a changeover in the situation vis-a-vis consumers or the people and corporations. When Tom and I were kids, there was a motto that we heard more than once, which was the customer is always right. Today it seems to have flipped. It seems that corporations can steal from people and with absolute impunity. No one from Wells Fargo that I know of has faced any criminal charges for stealing from their customers. I have a criminal complaint right now against a national chain widely advertised on television, which decided that I had bought something on a day I was not in their store and charged my credit card. I've had incidents with my original internet service provider where they made charges for something I'd never authorized, and then when confronted, they just said, "Oh, we didn't do that."
Yeah. So, Mike, what's your question for Congressman Pocan?
Basically, I just was wondering what we can do about it as people to get things back to the way they were.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Well, Mike, you bring up something that we have had some conversations in Congress on. A group of us are doing a future of work and a future of labor exploration, I guess is the best word. We're going around the country. We started at UC Berkeley. We're going to be in Madison, Wisconsin next week with our University of Wisconsin. We're going to be going to Michigan and to Rutgers in New Jersey. And we're exploring a bunch of issues about the future of work and future of labor. But one of the conversations that's come out of this is a real problem we have with this consolidation of these corporations where, let's face it, in the airline industry, there's only a few companies. They don't need to be very responsive anymore. And, a lot of the antitrust law changes happened actually under Bill Clinton that we've been living under that do need to be changed, that we're running into this very anti-consumer, undue control going to very few people and why they're operating the companies they're operating. One of the things in one of the conversations we had with the Roosevelt Institute, in a few industries, and airlines are one, real estate's another, where there's a few really big companies that are doing the work that they're doing. Often it's not just that there's only 4 or 5 entities competing, but the board of directors might have the same people on 2 or 3 of the board of directors. So clearly the decisions they're making are for themselves, not for the company, and certainly not for the consumer. So I think we're coming around some issues around antitrust that we are going to be pushing in Congress very, very soon.
Jesse in Miami, Florida, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thanks for this town hall. Need it more now than ever.
Thank you, Jesse.
Mr. Pocan, a tough question. You're a Democrat. How can a Democrat support capitalism? Because capitalism is very, very undemocratic.
Yeah, Jesse, I think that's a great broad conversation. Quite honestly, what I'm worried about right now is dealing with the issues that are coming before this country, maybe at the level I can have a bigger impact, which is in Congress. And I think that part of what we just talked about on antitrust is a good example. We had a few decades back changed antitrust laws that we've now kind of allowed this situation where a few big companies can consolidate, and it's not good for the consumers. It's not, quite honestly, good for the employees. It's only good for a few people at the top and the shareholders. If I can address that through antitrust laws, I can address that rather than a bigger, broader debate around economic models and systems. So I try to focus on those, Jesse, quite honestly. It's just, I think, a way that we can have the best impact and at the same time put out some positive, progressive alternatives to show how we could do things, and we've been doing that, whether it be things like the Co-op Caucus, which I've helped to found, and other things. So we're trying to do models to show people there are various ways to go that make sense, but I understand your question, Jesse. I just think my time is best spent on the reality of what I can maybe try to get done.
Tom in Waterloo, Iowa, watching Free Speech on Dish Network. We've got about a minute and a half to the break, Tom. Real quick question for Congressman Pocan.
Well, that's actually a little bit more difficult than that. Anyways, has anybody ever thought of coming up with the idea of appointing additional congressmen in the event that we should have an election result like what we did with Donald Trump? I mean, the guy won the electorate, but he lost the popular vote by an overwhelming margin. And in the case like that, a lot of it could be attributed to Jim Crow, because a lot of would-be Democrats were herded into a relatively small amount of congressional districts back in the day because they had nowhere else to live. And I suspect the same thing is going to happen with the Hispanic populations. And we need to offset this, because these results are going to happen over and over again. Is there anything been put on the table for that?
Yeah, Tom, I've heard a few conversations around that, but honestly, I think the thing we've been trying to focus on and what we're looking at, I think President Obama and Eric Holder and others are going to work on, is the redistricting process. And I certainly understand what your concern is. I think we're thinking we can impact it best and most immediate with the next redistricting that's coming up. And that's why most of the attention has gone on to that rather than something as large as how you would actually add additional members of Congress. I think that lift could be significantly different than the redistricting lift, which is, coming up very, very soon. After the 2018 cycle, you will have redistricting done across the country.
You're talking about gerrymandering here.
Yeah, absolutely, gerrymandering.
Yeah, but there's no way to regulate that federally, is there? I mean, the states decide how to do that.
No, there are some things that we can do to try to encourage it, and there are bills in Congress to do that, and also just working with the project that, quite honestly, President Obama is working on to try to do it state by state. Elections have consequences, which we all now, I think, realize, but they're also going to have really big consequences when we elect new governors and state legislatures in 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan.